I stumbled upon a parable that you've probably heard a number of times. And because I'm a nerd, I tried to figure out where it came from. Is anyone else kind of obsessive about this stuff? I had heard that it was an African parable. So then I did some research and digging and was like, okay, well, but where in Africa? That's a big place. Let's figure out where this parable comes from so that we can give proper attribution to the tribe or the people. I'm seeing blank stares. No one else is obsessive about this weird stuff, I know. But I actually stumbled upon the fact that nobody knows where this parable comes from. So I thought I'd share it thusly, a parable of unknown origin. It takes a village to raise a child. We've probably heard this phrase before, this parable before. But I think this is a place where I often get stuck in that individual bootstraps. Not individual, right? I have a wonderful partner, Hannah, who we together help to raise our kids. And oftentimes when we're stuck in the midst of something, we think that it's just us trying to figure out how to parent. And guess what? They never gave us a manual. Did we get the short end of that stick at the hospital or what? They didn't teach us all of this in college. So figuring out how to raise a child has been something that has challenged Hannah and I every step along the way. It's been some of our most amazing joys and some of our most terrible fears of, you think we're doing this right? Are we ruining our kids for every step along the way, dear? And the answer is probably yes and yes, right? We're doing our best just like each and every one of us, right? So it takes a village to raise a child. We'll come back to that in a minute. But as I was preparing for this sermon, I was thinking about Pastor Christine Ruth, who was a pastor here a few years ago, and she had this image of community that still calls to me. The different types of people in our lives that form our villages, the people who help us in all sorts of different ways. And it starts with the front porch sorts of relationships. Now, these are the sorts of relationships that we hold at probably arm's length. Now, there are probably relatively few people who are front porch people who I invite to kind of come and sit on our front porch, but won't let come into our house until this pandemic hit, right? And then we're meeting on the front porch all the time or in the backyard, or we've got all sorts of ways to gather. But these front porch people are people that we kind of hold at arm's distance. The classic example of this is we had someone running for state senate who stopped and knocked on the door and introduced themselves, but I wasn't really about to let them in and make them some cookies and coffee. I just kind of wanted to hear the pitch and say, okay, or yeah, not this time, and send them on their way. Or maybe it's somebody else who's coming by and selling Girl Scout cookies, always happy to buy Girl Scout cookies. That's a hint for future Girl Scouts in the crowd. I am always a yes when you come a knocking, but I'm not gonna invite you in and have you sit with my kids. I'll buy your Girl Scout cookies and say good job and send you on your way. But then, of course, there is the dining room sorts of relationships. We've got all sorts of these dining room sorts of communities that we bring into our home, and maybe we set a beautiful table like this. I looked on the internet and they're all perfectly manicured, these dining rooms. They're just stunning, perfect table, perfect lighting, perfect seating. It all looks wonderful. No little kids running around putting their sticky fingers on the chairs and wiping crayons and stuff all over the walls. This is definitely not my house here, let's just say that. But we have these dining room sorts of relationships. Maybe we would think about setting a table and having a dinner party with 3 or 4 other people that we know, having them over, talking late into the evening. Wonderful, wonderful friendships gathered around a dining room, or maybe it's out at a restaurant, or maybe you meet somewhere and go to a show. These sorts of friendships that we keep carrying forward and gathering together around shared interest or shared conversation. But Pastor Christine then talked about a different sort of relationships, a different sort of community, and that's the kitchen community. Now, I'm not sure if your kitchen looks like this. Again, I've already shown you my hand. This is decidedly not my kitchen. Maybe this is the kitchen we put on Pinterest for that future unknown date when we're really gonna do the big remodel in our house. This is definitely not our kitchen. But we have these kitchen sorts of relationships that after the party has gone, and maybe as you're preparing the dinner, you invite a few people back into the kitchen and you have a little whisper about what's really going on. You have a little conversation about the struggles with parenting or job life, or the struggles with people in your neighborhood or people in your building, or just your plain old struggles with health and life. These are the people that we kind of trust to lean on a little bit, that we might invite into a little bit closer relationship. But I don't think the kitchens usually look like this. They might look a little bit more like this. Just honest, authentic, unguarded, unmasked. It's a weird turn of phrase these days. The connection of human being to human being, where we can share and rely upon one another. So I want you to think about those layers of people in our lives, because they're all part of our community, right? They're all in one way, shape, or form people that we are connected to, but maybe some we let in a little bit more. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that at all. That's natural. We have certain people that we trust with certain things and certain people that we wouldn't trust. Now, the Girl Scout coming knocking on my door, if I were to go to her and say, well, my kids are going wild and I can't afford to pay my bills and we're not sure about the future of the world and the climate change and the political crisis, I think she'd just turn around and not want to sell me any more Girl Scout cookies, right? But with people that I know and trust, we can really lean into the things that bother us, the things that weigh us down. We can get into conversation where we actually are connected, tied together in common conversation.